Welcome to the TalentGrow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Halelly Azulay.
Welcome back, talent growers. This is the second ever Ask Halelly episode of the TalentGrow Show. I'm Halelly Answer, your leadership development strategist, here with answers to questions that I get from listeners, from the media, from audience members, from participants in my workshops about various topics related to leadership, communication, networking, and all those things that I talk about with you about how you can become the kind of leader people actually want to follow. So this one came in through the voicemail feature on my website, which I have been encouraging you to use. So today you'll hear what it sounds like. And of course, I always ask for permission to use the sound. So if you want to use that and want to be featured on a future episode of the TalentGrow Show, this is your chance. It's super easy. Anywhere on the talentgrow.com website, there is a black tab on the right-hand side. You click on that. You can then easily record a question, a comment, anything that you want to record for me. You have to make it short. It's about 90 seconds or so. And so what you'll hear in this episode is Harry Mullen, who is one of the listeners and also a reader of my blog, responded with a question. The recording thing cut him off, and then he recorded a second one. But we also had an email interchange. So this will be an interesting kind of hybrid where I'll try to include both his voice and some of the email exchange so that you can get the full gist of the question and the answer. And of course, I'll include it both in written form on the show notes page, as well as in spoken form here. You're listening to it right now. Okay, without further ado, here's Harry's first question. He read in a blog post that I had a little while ago that said, avoid the feedback sandwich. And in this particular blog post, I talk about how some people give the advice that I think is very, very wrong advice, that you should sandwich some kind of constructive feedback in between two pieces of bread of positive feedback to make a feedback sandwich. And I think this is very destructive. And of course, I explain that in the blog post. So you can check that out. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's called Don't Serve a Feedback Sandwich, How to Give Constructive Feedback in a More Palatable Way. So Harry read that and was responding to it with a follow-up question. This is perfect. It's exactly what I want. If you have questions for me, I want to know. So here is Harry's question.
Hi, Halelly. This is kind of exciting. A little avatar popping up, and you want a voice response. I'm Harry Mullen. I was just looking at your beef inside the sandwich for giving feedback. And I'm wondering what you think about the idea of asking a person if they want feedback first. And if they say no, button it.
This is a really interesting problem, right? I mean, if you ask someone first, I think that that's a very kind thing to do, actually. And I do suggest that, when you offer coaching, you should first get permission to offer coaching and feedback, the same thing. And you can say something as simple as, may I offer you some feedback? And that allows the person to not get caught off guard, but also sometimes to maybe speak up about, this is not the best time. I'm not in the best place. I don't think I can receive it as well right now. Can we talk another time? So I would say, first of all, I would want to know more about the relationship to give the proper advice. For example, are you the person's manager? Because in that case, they can't really refuse your feedback, right? It is within your role to give them feedback, and it is within their role to receive your feedback. So sometimes it might just be the time is not right for this feedback, but it's not that they can just completely refuse your feedback outright if you're their supervisor or manager. So in that case, I might say something like, if they say no, I'd say, can you elaborate? Why not? This is really important to your performance. Is this a bad time right now? Or is there something else that I should know? And I would just suggest you get curious and try to understand more. But you do need to persist and find a way to give the feedback, because it's totally role appropriate and business imperative that you do give that feedback. But it gets a little bit trickier if you are not their supervisor. If this person does not report to you, maybe it's your boss or a peer or a personal connection or a teammate or just anybody that's not in a reporting relationship where they report to you, then the story is a little bit different because they actually don't really have to listen to your feedback. They don't. So I'd still be curious though, why are they refusing it? If it's the timing or the setting, then that's something that you can change and you can try again a different time and you can honor their need to have it delivered in a different context. But maybe there is a history where your feedback has been particularly ill-delivered, or maybe it's been hurtful in the past and that's why they're refusing it. Or it could be that actually they've been hurt by feedback from someone else. It's not at all your fault, but they've become distrustful or defensive of feedback in general. It could be that maybe you have a low trust relationship. And in that case, I would say that's something to work on, right? You want to start working on repairing the trust and repairing the relationship and your ability to communicate openly. And you might have to wait before delivering feedback. Again, especially if it's not business imperative. Now, if it is, then I would say that that's the kind of conversation you need to have. But it's true, Harry, that you can't really force them to listen to your feedback. But the good news is that you've discovered a bigger problem. I mean, that sounds like not so good news, but the good news is you've discovered it, right? If there's some kind of a bigger problem in your relationship, in the way that you've been communicating with them, this is a good thing. You don't want to not know that. Right? If it's a relationship you care about to the extent that you care enough to give someone feedback, then you definitely care enough to figure out how to work on improving that relationship. So this is something that I would say is important to figure out. But you know what's cool? Harry got my answer. I sent it to him in a voice recording, and I also sent him some email. And he left me a second message, and he clarified his question, sort of in response to my answer. And then we elaborated a little bit further in an email exchange. So here's his second question.
Oh boy, this is fun. Your reply came in. It was very audible, so it worked out. Yes, of course, you can use my recording, and go ahead, use my name if it works. I got your email, so I'm replying to that. I won't go into a whole bunch of detail. I could say a lot about this, as I'm sure you can as well. It was just a point I was I was getting to, I guess, but it'll be clear in my email. Basically, I've been really influenced by Jean Moroney's work with, the acronym she refers to as OFNER that really comes out of Marshall Rosenberg's insights. And I think he's just absolutely amazing. And the implications, it's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what it's doing, what he's trying to do, which to my mind is really focus on the issue that we are independent, rational beings and that we have to interact with each other on that basis. And that concept is so relatively new and poorly understood. Political freedom is what it's been around for a couple hundred years. That's it. Before then, it was, do what I say or else. And this is just another aspect of that. So it really excites me. So I think we're on the same page. I certainly understand what you were where you're coming from and the suggestions you were making and all that sort of thing. That's where I was getting to.
He basically says, yes, of course, context matters, but he was addressing that in any interaction, there's at least two independent humans involved. He also mentions the teachings of Marshall Rosenberg in his nonviolent communication theories that he has been taught by Jean Moroney, who's a colleague and friend of mine who's appeared on episode 55 of the TalentGrow Show, actually. I haven't been in Jean Moroney's nonviolent communication workshop, which she does offer, and I'll link to it in the show notes. Her episode 55, it was titled How to Solve Problems Faster, Make Better Decisions, and Get Projects Finished with Targeted Thinking Tactics. But her work on nonviolent communication is something that she and I have discussed because we have periodic phone calls, actually, where we talk shop and we compare notes and we support each other, kind of like a peer mentoring relationship that we've developed over, I would say, probably the last year or so. All right. Well, Harry mentions the acronym OFNR. And in that, you make an offer and you want to give feedback, but you make a request. And the last letter, that R, is a request. But he's suggesting that if you just give somebody feedback and you don't request if it's okay, then in a sense, you're making a demand rather than an offer and a request. So then he's suggesting that it's true that it's not really cool to just dump it on the person. And then he links to another article that he found in Trader Joe's where someone, the author described, this is a Fast Company article, the author described how every manager that they've ever had at Trader Joe's somehow made them feel like they could tell them anything, personal or otherwise, even though they didn't have a lot in common with them since they were mostly different. And they did a lot of listening up front and opened up, and almost every conversation was one where they felt really trusted. This is amazing, right? So the idea around communication and trust is really central here, as Harry points out. And then he bonus links to even more information from the work of Patrick Lencioni, who is the author of The Advantage and The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I'll link to that in the show notes. And he describes trust as vulnerability-based trust, as a place where leaders comfortably and quickly acknowledge without provocation their mistakes, weaknesses, failures, and needs for help. They also recognize the strengths of others, even when those strengths exceed their own. And I love this. I always talk about the importance of vulnerability to building trust. And you can definitely read more about some of the writings that I've done around trust. I'll link to that in the show notes. So this is the challenge, right? Human complexities can easily derail communication. And this is where I responded to Harry and let him know I appreciated his input. I totally agree. And that bottom line, I believe in the trader principle, which I described in a blog post that I link to also in the show notes. So the idea is that people should always engage in trade. It's not trade of money for money. It's trade in value, where each one in any kind of an interaction, and certainly in any relationship, is getting and giving an equal value. And value is perceived by the receiver. So the value could be very different that each one provides. For example, in a relationship with a mentor, for example, the mentor may provide a value in the form of feedback, of guidance, of sharing their experiences. Whereas maybe the protege in that relationship is not providing their experience and their long history of doing something, but they provide their appreciation. They provide wanting to learn from the mentor and wanting to extend the mentor's legacy. And they provide the satisfaction to the mentor of delivering the results of the advice that the mentor gives. So the mentor gets the satisfaction of having made a difference and knowing about that. See, these are different kinds of value, but as long as both people in the relationship find it to be valuable and find the exchange to be an even exchange of value in whatever way they choose, then it's a fair relationship. So bottom line, you can't really force someone to hear your feedback, but you do need to mind your relationships and figure out how to nurture those relationships so that there is an openness to feedback and so that it is perceived as a value for both sides of the equation. Well, this was our little foray into the new format of Ask Halelly, featuring the technology of the voice recorded question. And I really would love to know first what you thought about this topic. And also, I want to hear what you want to submit for a future Ask Halelly episode. You can submit a voice question like Harry did on my website, super easy. Or you can email me, halelly@talentgrow.com, or you can submit a contact us form from my website. Just go to the contact tab and fill that out. Or you can send me a direct message on Twitter or on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Lots of ways to get in touch with me. And most importantly, that you do get in touch with me and give me ideas for future episodes, questions that you'd like me to discuss, topics or guests that you'd like to suggest, and how you are finding this type of new episode. All right? It's super important to me, and I really appreciate you. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here on the TalentGrow Show. And I really appreciate your time today. Harry Mullen, thank you so much for your question. And you, thank you for listening. Until the next time, make today great.
Thanks for listening to the TalentGrow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.